Hi, I'm Guy Trainin, and this is an introduction to the Capstone project, and I'm walking you through the PowerPoint that we already have, and you're more than welcome to open the PowerPoint and browse it later, and to send any questions that you have going forward. But this is the Capstone project. The goal of the Capstone project is really to demonstrate your competency in one aspect of your teaching. As an elementary teacher, we have many aspects of our teaching that we can highlight, but what we're asking in the Capstone is to choose something specific. And we want it to be narrow, but not too narrow, so you can focus on integrating math and other subject matter. That's one way to think about it. Or you can focus on teaching reading to every learner in your classroom, or you can focus on using manipulatives or something like that. What we're trying to convey is that we want your competency statement to be specific enough and bounded enough that you can actually present a coherent thesis in 15 minutes, because that's all you're going to have. You're going to have about 15 minutes, so about 11 or 12 minutes of you speaking about your project, and then 2 to 3 minutes of faculty asking questions, clarifications, etc. about your project. So one, this is going to be a presentation in front of faculty and your fellow students, not in front of everybody, but in front of a small group. And the second thing is you have limited time, so you have to be focused. It's focused about the competency statement and later focused about evidence and the way you do your analysis and reflection. One of the first things that you need to do is you need to think about an area where you think you're doing an exceptional job. And what's important to remember about the Capstone project is it is all about your work. So it's not what your cooperating teacher is doing. It's not what somebody else has done or the school is doing during student teaching. It's about things you have done. So it's lessons you've delivered, projects you've written, things that you have done yourself with students in practicum as much as possible, and of course in student teaching, but not reporting about others. The second thing is, of course, evidence. You have to bring evidence to show that you are competent, and we're looking at two things here. We're looking at the way you bring that evidence forward and how much it supports your claim, how deep is your thinking about that. And we want you to rely on faculty in the first phase and on peers to get some feedback about how coherent your argument is, how good your competency statement is, and then you'll be sure to be ready for the final product. Now, we've got some due dates coming up. February 16th is when competency statement is due, and then we will meet on March 4th, and the first half of the day will be professional development, and the second half of the day would be all devoted to talking to different faculty members about your project. So you want to come to that day after competency statement has been approved by faculty and where you have solid ideas about how you want to do it, what evidence you're going to bring. So during that day you can ask related questions, get as many answers as possible so you can move forward positively. So you want to make sure that you're moving with that process. And the first thing you need to rely on, and the first thing that I want you to consult, is the cognitive map for the department. In that cognitive map, we have 9 big ideas, and you need to select your competency statement to fit within one of those 9. Now, the document you have on Blackboard details the 9 and has supporting questions. You do not need to answer the questions. Definitely do not need to answer all of the questions about a specific area. The questions are there only as an example of ways to treat that. So if the questions help you, use them. If they're hindering you, if they're confusing you, or if in some way they're actually distracting you, you do not have to use them. If you're not sure, this is what faculty is here about. You're supposed to register to a group with a specific faculty member. We've opened 15 different faculty members that can help, that have all been through this process and will be happy to help. You tell them what your competency statement is, and what your theme out of the cognitive map is, and they will be able to give you supportive feedback and guide you whether you're too wide or too narrow. If you have some ideas about evidence, it'll be great to share that with them early, just so you can get feedback and start working. There are 9 themes. I'll go over a few. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I will give a few examples just so you get the hang of it. So one of the themes is theories of learning and their roles in teaching. And we have associated questions. People use that in the past, at least, to look at aspects of development, for example. It's a great way to think about that. Others have looked at how research impacts what they're actually using in the classroom. What is it that is based on that? Others have used it to talk about social justice. So you can take different theories of learning from your Ed Sci classes, from your 330 and 331 class, and apply them. If that works for you, that's the right theme for you. Another one that I see very often is teaching subject matter. This is a very common one because in that one you zero in on a specific subject matter or on a way you integrate. Both are fine, but you want to use one or the other, of course. So if you want to talk about how much you've developed in teaching math in different ways, then choosing teaching subject matter would probably be the perfect theme for you. Assessment practices, if you talk about how you assess students to determine what to teach or to determine how much they've gotten, this is a great theme that has been very successful in the past for students because it requires analysis and reflection within that. And the major thing there is to make sure that you're consistent enough. Many of the students that have used this theme have really looked at different kinds of assessments, so formal and informal, summative and formative, ways to integrate multiple sources of information into instruction. The most important thing in a thing like this is to show how you use the assessment to actually guide instruction. So what would be the next steps after you've done the assessments, not just the design of the assessments themselves. So you can get a sense of what these are. One word about structured learning environment, it's a great thing to use. What I would caution you, though, is to make sure that when you talk about structured learning environment, you don't focus too much on discipline or student behavior management, but you actually try and connect it back to learning. If you connect it back to learning, you're safe. But in the last few years, every time students have used structured learning environment, there have been a few that forgot to connect it back into learning, and that has landed them in a little bit of trouble. So what's the first phase? The first phase is writing the competency statement, and the idea is you have to demonstrate your competency in one theme by using a diverse range of products from your program. Okay, so what do you have in a capstone project? You have a statement of competency with a theme, a range of products that are the evidence to support your competency, synthesis, how does it all fit together? How does it support my claim? And reflection. Reflection is kind of looking back. What did I do? What did I learn from it? Looking forward. What do I still need to learn? That's the easiest way to think about it. Most capstone projects, although not all, tend to focus on a process of learning. So you identify an area, let's say teaching social studies, and you talk about how early in the program this is the kind of lesson you've done, and it's not very good because it didn't incorporate appropriate children's literature, perhaps, or source materials. And then you show a lesson that you've done on the way, and then something during student teaching. And in that way, you can actually see this process of growth and show it to others. So this is an effective way to do it. It's not the only one. Another way has been to show your ability in a few different ways of thinking about the same thing. So for example, going back to the idea of assessment, you can show in a capstone project how you used formative assessment in one area and then summative assessment in another, and a standardized assessment in a third one. So you have 3 kinds of assessments all pouring into the same idea of guiding instruction. That's possible too. So we're not locked into one way of doing things, but we do need everything to fit together and for you to think about your process of growth throughout the program. What is the format? This is an in-person presentation, as I said. It's not a paper, and there will not be a paper with it. It's either a poster or a computer-based presentation or anything else that you think can represent your ideas clearly. We've seen people use trifolds like a science project. We've seen people just use examples on a table and then explain them. We've seen a lot of technology, and over the last few years, technology has really become an important piece out of this. So people had a board with some evidence, and then they had their part of the presentation on the iPads, or the other way around. They used iPads to bring in a video or pictures of students or other things. So you're open to these kind of things. Remember, there will be a lot of people presenting at the same time because it is done like a poster fair. So there are about 7 or 8 students at least presenting while you're presenting, probably more. And so you want to make sure that whatever you're using is accessible to everybody. We will not project anything. Instead, we will use the screen that you have, and since only 2 faculty members and a few of your peers will be watching at any one time, that would be very doable. We can bring computers for you if you need them. Personally, I would recommend bringing your own devices simply because a computer we supply you that morning may or may not work with the presentation or with the materials you have, and it's much safer to have a computer that you can practice with, or an iPad, or whatever it is that you're using. It is very important to remember that you do need to save 3 to 4 minutes for faculty to be able to ask questions and get any clarifications. And you need to remember that faculty questions are there to help you and not in any way hurt you. So we want you to be open to those questions and make sure that you're listening to them and very, very careful in the way you answer them. They are meant to help. So there was something the faculty member who was at your table did not understand and trying to get the clarification so they can give you the higher score. This is how it's always played out. So statement of competencies really have 2 major parts. One is the part that outlines what you can do. So I'm able to integrate different content areas effectively. That's a little broad for me, but that's something I've seen used. The second piece of that competency statement is to make sure you say why what you're doing is important. So you want to say, why is it important? For example, to attend to all learners' needs in my classroom using different modalities, making sure they're all successful. So in that way, you're saying, this is what I'm good at, and the second part is, this is why it's important. It's important to have both of those, and it's important to have enough detail in that statement that directs the faculty to exactly what you're saying you can do. And again, it needs to be narrow, but not too narrow. So you want to make sure that it's not just something that can include every piece of teaching you've ever done, but actually has a way to kind of show us that you can think about things in a divided way. When we say diverse products, what do we mean? We mean that diverse products are different artifacts from your experience at UNL and even outside UNL. So it can be from student teaching, from your methods classes, from practicum experiences across your program, from other education courses, other courses on campus, and even from outside experiences. Whether you've taught in an after-school program, in a preschool, any specialized environment, that works as well. You have to make sure that the experiences in schools take precedence. So if you're having and the recommendation is to have 3 kinds of products, at least 2 of them should be from your practicum assignment / student teaching at UNL, and 1 of them can be from the outside if it's appropriate. Again, it depends on your specific circumstances and what you want to bring. Now, the range of evidence is also about making sure that you bring different things. You can bring lesson plans. I recommend, if you have a lesson plan, to bring either a video with it or a student product or a few students' products with there. You can bring reflections that you've done with your cooperating teacher, with your instructor in a methods class, or with your supervisor. You can bring classroom photos, as we said before, videos, websites, student case studies, creative products. And the important thing is to know that you need to bring the products from different points in the program or different points in your growth. So you can't bring all the products from the Lit Lock or from student teaching or from the reading center or anything like that. It's got to be from multiple points to represent your growth and to show that it's not just about that one time point. Synthesis. What do we want you to do in synthesis? You need to contextualize. You need to make sure you give us some details about when happened, what happened, why does it matter, how does it support your competency statement, what did you learn. And it is really, really important to use professional language. You are presenting to other educators, you are presenting to faculty, so you want to use professional terms. If it's assessment, you want to use things like formal assessments and informal assessment, summative and formative, things like that that are clearly defined, and it shows your understanding of the language of education. So this is really important. Next, in reflection, what did you learn? How do I identify what I still have left to learn, and how you will go about learning more? What are the areas where you need help? And I really do recommend that you look at the rubric very carefully as you start doing this to make sure that you're answering all of the questions and you know what is the expectation for the quality of the final product. Again, Capstone presentation. Faculty pairs will evaluate you. The presentation will be 15 minutes, up to 12 of your presentation. If you need to prepare, and you do, you want to make sure you have all the materials, but then you need to practice with others, whether they're your peers from the class, whether they're family members, significant others, or the mirror. I don't care. But you've got to try it out, you've got to hear it, you've got to maybe have feedback from somebody else, and you really, truly want to make sure that you're on time, because we are actually not very good judges of time. Any of us that teaches lessons knows that sometimes we go over, sometimes we go under, and a 12-minute presentation is long, but it's not that long. And I've seen people go too short, which usually means you don't have enough detail, and I've seen people go too long, which means they don't get enough time to do the reflection and synthesis and lose crucial point. Let's talk for a second about something you don't want to hear, and that is, what do you do if you're not successful? So to pass the capstone, you need to get a score of at least 10. Most people do, but not everybody. If you do not meet that requirement, you will have 1 week at the end of the semester before graduation to fix it and present it to faculty members at the time that we will arrange. So if you do not pass during that day, you will know immediately, because we give everybody the feedback during that day. If there is a problem, there will be time to make it better, but we don't want to get there. What are some key ideas to make sure that you're not ending there? The first thing is, make sure you register with a faculty member and get feedback on your competency statement on time. Deadline, February 16th. That would set you on the right track. Second thing is, unless you absolutely have to, and with my approval, once faculty approves your competency statement, you do not change your competency statement. It's really easy to say, oh no, I want to do this or that or the other thing. That usually leads to a not positive path. So choose something carefully and then commit to it. If there's a problem and you want to discuss it, that's okay, but you have to discuss it with me, email me, even set a time to talk to make sure that we're on the right path and we're not just meandering. So that's the second thing. The third thing, when do people not do well enough to pass? One is when all the evidence is from one time point. Usually it's student teaching, everything is from student teaching, you need multiple time points, and as a result, that's almost automatically going to be problematic. The second one is not connecting the evidence to the actual competency statement. Each and every piece of evidence needs to connect to the competency statement. How many pieces of evidence? About 3. And they can be supporting each other. So if you have a lesson plan and a student product, that would be considered 1 because there's a student product from that lesson. But if you have a lot more than 3, what we find is you don't get enough time to get to synthesis and reflection, again, hurting yourself. Making sure that at all times you're referring back to learning and not just behavior. That has been a stumbling block for some students in the past. I do have to say that last semester everybody passed, so it is possible that nobody would have to redo their capstone assignments, and that's an important thing to know. So this is the capstone presentation, and your task right now is competency statement. I want to remind you that we have a large selection of successful capstones from the past, so you can see they have presentations and they start with their competency statement. So go look at those. They will be very happy. They will be very helpful for you going forward, understanding what it is. Watch 2 or 3. Don't watch just 1, just because they're different, and what we want to support is a variety of approaches to this, not just one approach that everybody takes. The capstone project itself does create some anxiety and does create some difficulty on the way, because you're also student teaching, and the majority of the time and effort should go to student teaching. This is just a small piece that goes with that whole student teaching semester. What do I want you to do? I want you to really try and focus on that with us, faculty, and with your peers if you'd like. But please don't turn to your cooperating teachers. They don't know much about the capstone project. They've never seen it. They've never participated in it, most likely, unless they're students, unless they have graduated in the last few years. So they are not familiar enough. Do not transfer the anxiety to them. If you do have anxiety over this, if you're not sure, if you have questions, please turn to me or the faculty member you're working with. We will be happy to respond to you and to alleviate any concerns. If you need to meet, whether it is in a phone conference, on Skype, or face-to-face, I'll be happy to do it. You send an email, we'll set a time, and we'll do that. Even the supervisors, not all of them are very familiar with the process, so really try to keep them out of it unless they have a lot of experience in that area. So this is the capstone. Good luck, and I will see you on March 4th. Bye.